So our next speaker has actually just announced a rebrand, which is all about growth. He was BD for Travel, now he's BD4. He's always one of the most hotly anticipated speakers of our summit. I'm bigging him up now, so you know he's got a long way to fall. So please welcome Andy Owen Jones from BD for Travel, founder and chief executive, to give our first Digital Masters.
Thank you. Thank you all. It's all downhill from here, isn't it? So 16 years ago, I remember sitting in the office of the CEO of one of the biggest travel companies in the UK and saying, you really need to look at open-ended search. You really need to look at unconstrained search because customers love it. And he really liked the idea. He agreed customers liked it. But for commercial reasons and political reasons inside the organization, he said, it's never going to fly here. And Love Holidays have eaten their lunch ever since, and they no longer exist, actually, in the same format that they were. And I honestly believe that things that focus on what customers want work long term. And they override political things and they override commercial considerations. If you've got a great customer experience, you'll win. I say this as a grandfather. I've probably seen more failures than any of you in the room. Things that focus on what customers want and a great customer experience will win in the long term. We have just rebranded, and we're not moving out of travel. Actually, we do find it, we think, easier to recruit dropping the travel name, which is a bit of a scary thing. We are after data scientists. We're after people who can really work the data. And we're moving into a few other areas, and I'll describe some of those things in a minute. But what I really want to talk about is how do we focus on what the customer wants and be a travel agent at scale? Because we should have perfect knowledge of the product, shouldn't we, as online travel agents? We should have perfect knowledge. We know what everyone's looking at. We know what everyone's doing. We should have that perfect match. And yet somehow we treat people not as individuals, we treat them as segments. And I guess the fundamental thing is what we need to do as a company, whether that is as a retailer or a travel company, we need to find the right way to put the right thing in front of the right person at the right time. And it's really hard. How many of you, when you look at your technology, can deliver exactly the right thing and know that you have to the right individual at the right time? Or are you delivering segments of people, segments of things, and hoping it works out, and testing stuff over a long time sequentially to make something happen? Here's an example. In one particular market that we worked in, everyone gave out discounts. And so the first company would come along and give out 10% off when you buy a holiday, and the second one has to follow, and the third one has to follow. And soon you habituate everyone to getting discounts. And everyone in e-commerce likes to give a discount because it makes things happen somehow. But you start working with an airline. Revenue managers hate giving out discounts. So you've got this political balance going on. So we started talking to one large airline, and they gave us this wonderful series of rules. And this is kind of your mission should you choose to accept it. Then the tapes explode after they've given it. 12 rules. Promo code pop-up after X number of sessions. Own flights only. No code share. No adults. No business class. No premium economy. Take out certain O&D rules, certain times, and so on. You can't do these things. So typically what you'd do then is you'd say, let's try out this execution of a discount. Let's give it to these people and see if you make more money or whatever. But somehow the salient question is, can you juggle these things better by understanding the individual customer and working out what they need from that? Can you work out who wouldn't buy if they didn't have a voucher and who's going to buy anyway and do something with that? You can't really do that at the level of a segment because, I mean, what are you? Are you in a given segment? Certainly when I started working with one airline, they'd done 140 million segments. And we said, so what happens when someone does something? Which segment are they in? Say, oh, that's the problem. As soon as they start doing something, we don't know what segment they're in anymore. And segments are really difficult to get granular with. So we took a different approach here. What we did was we set up a control series so that we could measure how things were moving over time. How does the thing fluctuate on a Monday, a Tuesday, a Wednesday? And then we modeled every individual customer and said, is this person likely to book? Are they price sensitive? Are they likely to leave? And so on. And then we put the interesting kind of little snippet in which says, okay, let's randomly give out vouchers to individuals and see their response to it and see every single signal that they give off and learn over time who's buying and who's not buying and who wouldn't buy if they had a voucher and who would, and combine all those things together. What was quite interesting was the audience-driven one delivered a 5% uplift in that very defined group after the cost of the vouchers. But when you started to combine that over time and learned from that and added in your trained data on who would buy and who wouldn't, within that very confined group, we had a 9% revenue uplift after the cost of the vouchers. And it's all about the granularity. If you're setting up segments and says, I've got 11 rules, let's test out these 11 rules and give them a voucher, you can test the execution. You can test the particular thing and work out what happens. But you've got to then test sequentially and do stuff, and it takes forever. You can only test one thing at a time. If you can get more granular and say, let's understand every individual, let's orchestrate their experience, and let's work out what to put in front of that individual, you can get far, far deeper. So, another example. One of our large customers in another market, what we did with them was we put recommenders on board. So we started to look at every individual. Are they moving from an inspiration stage into a planning stage? And what can we do for them? And of course, what you want to do is give them recommendations. So we would tailor recommendations for people who were planning their holidays. And that was a nice thing. That gave a personalized, the personalized recommenders gave a 5% uplift on those segments. That worked really well. But we found that there were people who were turned off by those things, who came in a particular way where they were decided what they already wanted. They came either from meta-search, or they had the characteristics of someone who already knew what they wanted. And then recommendations distracted them. And what you wanted to do with those individuals on an individual level, not on a segment level, on an individual level, was turn off the recommendations and just get that extra 1%, which you're not then throwing off the scent because you're inspiring them to look in a different direction. And you can only do that if you get away from the mentality of thinking in terms of segments. We have to be more aspirational than that. So during COVID, we thought, let's start to think about retail. And so we approached some retailers and we've started working with retail companies. Most of our testing technology or ideas in e-commerce have come from print advertising in the 50s and 60s. You take segment A, do a mailing. Segment B, let's see which one comes better. McCann Erickson did it for newspapers. dunnhumby did it very famously with shopping baskets for Tesco. They created the Tesco Club Card, a wonderful piece of understanding of what was going on in supermarkets. We, of course, don't have the luxury of so many shopping baskets in the travel industry. We have far fewer. We don't have something every week that we can analyze. But that, in a way, gives us a data advantage, because we've got the messiest data of everyone, haven't we? Books don't disappear. Books don't change price all of a sudden when someone else has bought a book. If they did, it would be pretty chaotic. And most retail systems are based on shopping basket analysis. They don't look at people's search patterns. We thought they would. We thought they would all have this real-time stuff sussed. But actually, they work even more at the level of segments than we do. So we've discovered all sorts of interesting opportunities, but we've also learned some lessons. So I thought I'd share some of the lessons we've learned from retailing with you. Good retailing takes the effort out of matching. And that's what we're fundamentally about, isn't it, as businesses? Matching great products with the people who need them. Certainly one of the things we do is we profile everyone in real time. We've got this great display where we can show people their customers for the first time. And it's quite interesting because the reactions to that are kind of, whoa, that's our customers. But we showed it to one large airline for the first time, not their customers yet. We said, look, this is what we're going to build for you. And the guy said, that's really interesting, but please don't show it to our C-level because they'll think you can do something with it. We said, but that's the point you can. He said, no. They'll think you can act at the level of individual. And that's the aspiration we have to get to. How can I treat you as a customer better if I treat you as an individual rather than I treat you as a segment? We should be the best matching people in the world. So, 4 learnings. Testing strategy is important. Content strategy is really important, much more important than we thought. The future of retail is not monolithic systems. I'm sure some of you are sitting out there thinking, how can I put my big monolithic system in? Monolithic systems are going out of fashion in retail, and we'll come on to why. And the question is not whether to focus on real-time fast data or slow CRM data, it's how do you govern the two of those and bring them together. The good news is no one's doing any of these things particularly well, which presents a lot of opportunities. So I'll take them one by one. Testing. What you measure is what you get. If your testing strategy is to optimize your site for the average user, your site will be optimized for the average user. How's that for a simple conclusion? And that's what most people's testing strategies are. You get variant A, variant B, variant A wins, so you make the whole site variant A. You have optimized for the average person. Not one person is the average person. How can you make your site far more dynamic, reflect people's shopping patterns, and surface the thing that people wanted? This is a very slow process. How do we decide what to put in front of people? You've got 10 different campaigns. You've got to test them out sequentially. How can we do that in such a way that instead of testing things sequentially and ensuring that everyone gets something that's inappropriate over a long space of time, you analyze your audience, you find who to test things with, and you test things appropriately? How do you reward your testing mechanism for putting the right thing in front of the right person at the right time? Monolithic systems are challenged. Airline industry is an interesting one. That's where you get the GDSs are great ones for building a partnership with a giant and saying, okay, now our system for e-commerce is X. And here everyone roll out this big monolithic system. What you'll find with the monolithic systems is they've all been acquired from different companies, and they don't necessarily work particularly well together. And the future is very much in retail, it's MAC. So it's microservices, it's headless, it's APIs, it's cloud hosted. And you can choose the best of breed payment provider, the best of breed personalization strategy, the best of breed content provider, the best of breed individual elements, and put those together. Even as we're putting in more monolithic systems in travel, because we think they're better integrated, the retail world is going the other way and starting to divide them down into cloud-based, API-based businesses. Look up the Mac Alliance. It's a good example of this. Fast and slow data. I know a few airlines who put in personalization based on their CRM. And the problem was, by the time you came to compute what that person wanted, that person's moved on. We come from the other angle, which is what's that individual doing right now, and how can we do something about it? But what you really need to get right, and we see this in retail, and we're working with some people to bring this together, is how do I understand what that person's shopping mission is right now? How do I understand how valuable they are? And how do I put a value on the actions that they're taking now? Is it more important to sign them up to a loyalty scheme? How much is that worth? Or to sell them this particular thing? Or to stimulate them with some idea or whatever? Can I put dollar values or pound values to each and every action and work out what to trade off so that my audience value becomes bigger over time? No one does it particularly well in retail, but we intend to, and we've got some partners that we're working with to do this. So what can we do? I think focus on not just CRM, not just fast data, but how do you bring those two things together and make that governance mechanism work so you've got some great decision-making tools and are able to do that. At every level, I'd encourage you to look at AI and controls. It's not, do I have business rules or do I have AI? You need both, and the companies that succeed in future will get really granular and have a good balance between AI-driven things, if they can hire enough data scientists, and business rules-driven things that come out of the organization. So we find in some of our tests that actually the combination of pulling the right thing and getting commercial guys to steer it performs better than just AI on its own or just the commercial guys on their own. But at each level, you need to match predictions with controls. Get that right, and you'll start getting things good. Audience profiles. Can I profile my audience, and can I understand which people to address with which thing? How can I pull the institutional knowledge out and support that with the AI? In a way, you think of your rules not as things that constrain, but as ways to pull your organizational knowledge out of your system and feed a system so that its hypothesis learn quicker. So in that initial example of vouchers, we could just have randomly put vouchers out and just seen what happened. And over time, that AI would have learned. But we accelerated it by building models that we thought would work, test those hypotheses, and accelerate what we're doing there. I would say orchestration will be a big challenge for companies. It's not a very big challenge now because actually most OTAs, most tour operators are not that big. The departments are not that strong. What you see in retail is the product people have got a very strong idea for shoes, and these product people have got a very strong idea for dresses, and these product people have got a very strong idea for food. And how do you arbitrate between those things? And actually we need to orchestrate those things based on what's important for the customer, not what's important for the politics of the organization. It's not such a big thing in travel because it's been hard enough to pull loads of hotels and loads of flights and all these things together. But as you've got the ability to put things in front of people coming through, orchestrating these things in the right way becomes important. Existing tool sets, are very complex to manage. We need to get the technology platforms right. They need to work. They need to be really fast. They need to be very customer-oriented. They need to be open-ended search, all those kind of things. But then we need to really think about the customer. What does the customer want? And the people who think about what the customer want will do better than those who don't. So, my conclusions. Look at composable comments and not just monolithic platforms. Don't just slap in a massive Adobe or a Salesforce or whatever it is and think that's going to do it. What's the best of breed, best of purpose for your organization at each level? It means you've got to think a bit more, but it will work better because you can swap out the underperforming ones and put better ones in. If you haven't moved to cloud, if you've got your stuff on premise, stop, move to cloud. Think customer first, and customer first will drive out organizational barriers. Put values on your customer decisions, because then you can sit and have an objective discussion. Should I invest in loyalty? Should I invest in this? Whatever. Do the hard work of thinking through how much this is worth to your audience, and then you can make more objective decisions. Look at how you bring the fast data and the slow data together. Some of you probably don't have either. Some of you are only relying on CRM. Some of you are only optimizing your front end. Bringing those two things together in real time will transform how you think about your customers, because you've got to think through those difficult decisions. Think in terms of orchestrating and profiling rather than segmenting and testing. They're not mutually exclusive, but you will get better value for your customers if you think of being really granular and thinking to the level of the individual and then working out what to put in front of them. It's hard, but you will have the same conversation now in 10 years' time as Love Holidays has just demonstrated compared to some of the old players. And finally, I would say take out bias in your organization by setting hard measures for KPIs. How much is it worth to sign someone up to a loyalty scheme? How much is it worth to sell this particular product? How much is it worth to get someone as a repeat buyer? Put some hard metrics on those things, and then you can take some of the organizational politics out of your discussions. Thank you.